For an avoidant personality, the scariest thing is not that they have lost you, but that this time they know they can never come back. French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "If you feel lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company." This statement applies perfectly to those with an avoidant nature. They build walls of distance and silence around themselves to avoid intimacy, so they never have to face rejection or vulnerability. To them, these walls seem to provide protection, but in reality, they are just an attempt to cover up an inner emptiness. But when you walk out of their life and close the door forever, those walls no longer protect them, rather they collapse upon them from within. Suddenly they are forced to face the truth. The freedom and independence they thought was their strength was nothing but an illusion. In today's video, we will explore what really goes on in the mind of an avoidant person once they are convinced they can never return to your life. Why does your memory not bring them comfort, but instead become a source of constant unease and obsessive analysis? And how does this expose the inner fears and silent battle they have been running away from for years? Stay with us till the end, because I will also share an important insight that will not only help you understand the avoidant mind better, but also give you the chance to look deeper into yourself so that you never get trapped in this cycle again. When an avoidant person realizes that they can never come back into your life, the very first illusion that breaks is their belief that they could always maintain control by keeping their distance. The certainty that no matter what happens, you would never close the door. This is their greatest weakness, because this certainty was in fact their way of avoiding the fear hidden in intimacy, rejection, and the risk of exposing their true vulnerability. For them, your relationship was never just a love story that came to an end. They saw it more like a game where they believed they could return whenever they wanted. They don't remember you as tender, loving memories, but rather they endlessly analyze every word, every moment, every sign, at which point you let them come closer, and at which point you closed that door forever. What was the moment when they lost control over you? Which of your actions was it that closed the door forever? What thing or which person gave you enough strength to resist? According to Bowlby, this is the state known as the activated attachment system, when the long-suppressed core fear suddenly awakens. But instead of accepting it, the avoidant person tries to run from that fear. They search for every possible way to revive the illusion of distance and control. They may quietly watch you, use fake accounts to look into your life, or gather information about you through others. But none of this is to restore a genuine relationship. These are only ways to soothe the ego that can no longer rely on the belief that they could always come back. The tragedy is that the more they analyze, the more restless and confused they become. Sometimes your love and closeness, things they once dismissed as weakness or a burden, now prick at their pride like thorns. But instead of using this as a chance for change, they convince themselves that if they had one more opportunity, they could manage the distance and control even better. Bowlby once said, "The bond we try to avoid is often the one that hides our deepest longing." But the avoidant personality does not accept this truth. They make every effort to deny that the freedom and independence they thought of as strength were in. That's why they go back into memories, not to preserve or cherish them, but to dissect them again and again. Every word, every reaction, every moment is examined as if to find out where they became afraid of closeness and where you decided to close the door forever. These questions never come from genuine remorse. They arise only from the fear of losing control, and when they find no clear answer, they slip into hidden behaviors, watching your social media, creating fake accounts, or even showing up in places where they know you often go. For the avoidant, the greatest shock is that an ending can actually be real, because in their mind, a relationship could always be placed on pause. But when you close the door and lock it, they are forced, perhaps for the first time, to face the truth. Control was never entirely in their hands. All these actions only deepen the wound of the avoidant's ego. Whenever they see you happy and moving forward, they feel with intensity that their control has ended forever. French philosopher Albert Camus once said, "Man's greatest rebellion is not to accept his fate, but to confront it." But for the avoidant personality, confronting their loneliness and fear is the hardest task of all. To escape this, they create distance, and when they see that you have left them for good, instead of enduring the emptiness inside, they become entangled in outer projections. They blame others, invent new narratives to prove themselves innocent, or hide behind silence to try to make you appear weak. All of this is nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain the illusion of power, even if in reality nothing has changed. But what they fail to understand is that your silence is the greatest blow. Your refusal to respond, your refusal to re-enter the game, renders all their tactics useless. This silence is not cowardice, but a conscious decision. It is a declaration that your worth will no longer be determined by their hands. This is the moment that makes their entire game meaningless. After being left, the avoidant gets trapped in a circle of obsession. They replay the game they lost over and over again, but they lack the courage to ask themselves, why did I lose? At what point did I lose everything? If ever they dared to ask these questions and see the true answers, they would have to confront their darkest weaknesses, the fear of intimacy, the terror of abandonment, and the helplessness of not being able to bear emotions. But an avoidant nature can do anything to avoid such questions. Instead of learning, they repeat the same old game in a new relationship. On a deeper level, your memory never fades from their mind, because you were not just a person, you became a symbol. You are proof that there are people who do not tolerate endless distance, who refuse to accept repeated withdrawals in the name of self-protection. This is the very lesson their ego despises the most. When you chose to walk away and never return, you became a mirror showing them their own reality. The reality that love is not a means of control, that a bond cannot be forced, and that respect comes only from sincerity and presence, things that an avoidant attitude cannot create. And since they cannot shatter that mirror, its reflection continues to haunt them. It is important to understand that setting your boundaries is not just about protecting yourself in the present, but about cutting off the very fuel of their ego. If you reopen the door, you not only hand control back to them, but also give them another chance to avoid facing their true issue. And so the same cycle begins again. That is why the real ending does not come with just saying goodbye, but with the decision to never let them back in. This is the moment when you stop being the victim of their story, and instead become an observer standing outside, watching the whole play unfold without being pulled into it. And it is at this point that you truly become free. When the door of return is closed forever, the avoidant begins to live in an entirely new reality, a reality where all the tactics that once worked on you have now become powerless. In their mind it feels as if, for the avoidant personality, all of this feels like a kind of system error that they can never accept. They always wear the mask that they need no one, that they are free and independent, and that no one can ever have control over them. This mask convinces them that they can let someone close whenever they want and step away whenever they want. But when you stop responding to them, that mask falls, and behind it remains only the emptiness that they themselves do not want to face. This is the moment when their inner fear becomes uncontrollable. This fear is not just about bad habits or weak behaviors, but about the loneliness, helplessness, and the terror of abandonment that they have buried deep inside themselves for years. You can think of it as a dark room where they have locked away all the parts of themselves they consider unacceptable. But when you close the door on them forever, that room suddenly bursts open and everything they had been running from comes out. Since they don't know how to accept their weakness and integrate it as part of themselves, they begin to push it outward. Often this happens through projection. They may create stories that you are unfaithful, selfish, or ungrateful, any accusation that can save them from having to face their own truth. But in reality, all of these are the very aspects they refuse to acknowledge within themselves. That's why many people who have been close to an avoidant and then refuse to take them back eventually become the target of their silent accusations or their cold yet cutting behaviors. But this behavior is also part of a larger cycle, obsession. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "What you repress in the depths of your soul is what controls you the most." The same thing happens here. The avoidant cannot repress your memory because for them you are no longer just a person, but a symbol that reminds them there are people who cannot be controlled through repeated distance or silence. This is why they keep repeating the same old patterns and behaviors. They may try to get news about you through a mutual acquaintance, accidentally send you a message, or try to show that they have changed. But when you still do not respond, your silence leaves even deeper wounds in their already fragile ego. For them, the greatest truth is this: by moving on, you force them to confront that deepest wound inside, the fear of abandonment. But instead of taking this moment as an opportunity for healing, they deny it, resist it, or begin replaying the same game all over again in a new relationship. The avoidant personality seeks a new relationship or a new support to temporarily suppress that painful feeling. But the interesting thing is that no matter if they are with someone else, the memory of you remains inside them. And this memory is neither of pure love nor of emotional attachment, but of a constant comparison. Does this new person allow me to feel as powerful in my freedom as the old one did? Do they fall under my control more easily? Do they support my ego more strongly? If the answer is no, then the memory of you becomes even more agonizing for them. It reminds them that they lost a support that no one else can replace, and this is the very moment where you must recognize how powerful the act of ending a relationship forever truly is. The Greek philosopher Aristotle once said, "Man is by nature a social creature who cannot be complete without others." For the avoidant, this statement is a bitter truth. They use freedom as a shield to escape intimacy, but your refusal to return is not only an act of self-protection, it is a much bigger transformation. It is the sign of the moment when you freed yourself from your own fears and dependency. You chose the light, and this light now directly touches their darkness. But this light is not to save them, it is to free you from the prison they once tried to hold you in. Once you understand this, their remembering you or obsessing over you no longer feels like a threat. Instead, it becomes proof that you have stepped out of the power game on which their survival depended. You are no longer a pawn on their chessboard, and when the pawn no longer exists, the game itself becomes meaningless. Without an opponent, there is no game, and the avoidant is finally forced to face the one thing they fear the most: sitting alone with themselves. In the end, the greatest lesson is this: you cannot force them to confront their weaknesses, nor can you change them. What you can do, and what is most powerful, is to keep control over your own door. Keep it closed, not out of hatred, but from the understanding that if you reopen it, the same cycle will begin again. You have learned how to stand on the other side, and simply watch them struggle with their loneliness and fear, without being pulled into it. And from that position, you step into a new life. A life where your worth is no longer determined by someone else's approval or presence. And in the end, you realize an important truth. When an avoidant person cannot come back into your life, they do not remember you with genuine regret or warmth. They remember you as a wound to their ego, a failure they cannot accept. This reaction is inevitable, because what they have been avoiding all their life, true intimacy, and facing their own vulnerability, your leaving exposes it directly. But this is no longer your problem. Your role is neither to save them, nor to prove that they can change. Your role is to guard your door, to keep it closed, not with hatred, but with the awareness that if you let them back in, the cycle of damage will begin again. Aristotle said, "Self-control is the greatest victory. When you firmly say enough, no more, and walk away, you have faced your own fears, the fear of loneliness, the desire for approval, the pressure to save others, and you chose the light. That is the real victory. It is silent, it needs no audience, but it becomes a turning point in your inner growth." Remember, your power does not lie in making them regret. Your power lies in the fact that you broke free from their control and will never allow yourself to be caged again. This very truth makes you into a mirror that shows them the one thing they despise the most, that there are people who can never be controlled, and that mirror will haunt them for as long as you are gone. So if today you stand at the threshold of choice, remember this: stopping is an act of courage, and standing firm in that decision is proof of your inner strength. You are not just leaving behind a toxic relationship, you are entering a stage of selfhood where your worth is no longer defined by another's eyes but by your own truth.